What is up, YouTube? My name is Eben, and today on Forgotten Fridays, we are going to take a look at one Pokemon from the most recent set that I think was way too quickly cast aside, and that is Porygon-Z. No, not the Primal Trait one. This is the quote-unquote regular one. It's got 130 HP, a 2 energy retreat, no resist, and a fighting weakness. Okay, well, more or less standard for a sort of, forgettable, colorless Stage 2 Pokemon. But its attacks are both really noteworthy and very powerful. Its first attack, Cyber Crush, costs 1 colorless energy. That's it. And it discards all special energy attached to each of your opponent's Pokemon. It just wipes their board completely of special energies, which for many decks is just absolutely devastating. Double Dragon energies, double colorless energies, strong energies, all just gone. All of them. Not just one, which would be devastating enough, but every single one everywhere. No hiding. And that's pretty amazing. True, it doesn't deal damage, but when you set your opponent back potentially so many turns, that's pretty powerful. Of course, not all decks will be vulnerable to that, but we still have its second attack, which for 3 colorless energy, which is very easy to achieve with your own double colorless energy, you get Slowing Beam. It's 70 damage, which means that with a Muscle Band you're dealing 90, which 90 plus 90 is 180, which will KO pretty much almost any EX that is not a Mega, so that's pretty important damage there, actually. And during your opponent's next turn, the defending Pokemon's attacks each cost 1 colorless more. So essentially, it Headringers the defending Pokemon, which, as anyone who's ever been hit by a Headringer knows, that's actually a pretty significant effect. And it forces your opponent to retreat out, which could cost them energies anyway, meaning that when they try to come back in, Slowing Beam could be that much more devastating, or by discarding the energy, they've essentially Slowing Beamed themselves, in effect. This guy is just amazing disruption and amazing control. He hurts your opponents on so many levels. It's basically all about taking away energies and taking people out. And think about it this way. They have to attach extra energy to attack with Slowing Beam, but they've already taken 70, or with a Muscle Band, 90 damage. Now they have to decide if it's worth it to attach the extra energy just to get off probably one attack and then get knocked out afterward. This guy's pretty amazing. He's a strong control card, he's easy to set up, and this whole deck is going to be about this guy. So of course, to get him set up, we're going to have 3 copies of Porygon-2, and we're also going to be running 3 copies of regular Porygon. So that's 9 Pokemon there. And when I think control and things like double colorless energy, well, I can't help but think about Seismitoad EX. And yes, the new set has kind of given him some trouble, but that's okay because the premier grass Pokemon right now is Vespiquen, who is exceedingly dependent on 2 things, item cards and double colorless energy. Porygon-Z takes care of those double colorless energies with impunity, and Seismitoad EX can prevent quick setups. So we're actually a little bit better matched against that deck than you might think, and not everything in the field is Vespiquen either. So this guy is still quite good. He loves double colorless energy, he loves Muscle Band, he is in many ways the perfect partner for Porygon-Z. I have also squeezed in 1 Shaman EX. You could easily put in a second or a third, but I have my reasons for running 1 for this particular variant of the deck anyway. So those are our Pokemon, and this is a modified deck, by the way, not expanded. We're opting for 4 Juniper. Okay, yes, it's technically now has to be Sycamore, but you know what, Sycamore? I don't see your full art, so yeah. Anyway, it's Sycamore, guys, if anyone asks. Alright, 2 Professor Birch's Observations. I know, it's not Shauna. I know, I've gone to the dark side. That's okay. 1 copy of Wally. If we hit him, great, he can set up our Porygon-Z's quickly. But he's also a discard fodder for your Ultra Ball. He's a good Versus Seeker target. Don't be afraid to Sycamore slash Juniper. To Sycamore him away. But he can be very good for early game setup, and I wanted to include 1 copy of Wally. That card has really surprised me. It's a lot more useful than I originally thought it was going to be. We have 1 Lysander for all the obvious reasons, and especially with Porygon-Z, we can make some pretty interesting plays with Lysander, so definitely nice to have him around. We're running 1 copy of Xerosic. This can be very good for getting rid of Headringers to keep our Seismitoad happy. And also, of course, it does special energy disruption against our opponents and can touch the back row. It can hit the bench, of course. So this is a pretty useful card, and we can always Versus Seeker it back to cause our opponents all kinds of grief. And energy removal is a very good way to keep control in this deck. Speaking of which, we are also opting for 1 copy of Team Flare Grunt for a similar reason. But even though it only targets the active, the fact that it can hit basic energies as well makes this card worth running, and a lot of decks run a very small energy count and don't have a lot of ways to retrieve it, if any. So actually, just energy removal in and of itself can be a game-winning strategy, pretty much regardless of what goes with them, let alone when you have Pokemon with other control elements like Porygon-Z or Seismitoad EX. Now, item-wise, we have 4 Trainer's Mail, because we're trying to get through our deck pretty quickly, and make sure all the right things happen. We've got 3 Ultra Ball, trying to help set up that Porygon-Z, and of course this can also help you empty your hand to go get your Shaman to draw some cards. Getting that one Shaman early game is not a shameful thing at all. We're also opting for 4 copies of Versus Seekers, while we've got a little bit lower supporter count. We're just going to go for those 4 Versus Seekers to make sure we can always get the right supporter for the right time, the right situation, and really put some of those one-ofs to use in the right circumstances. We're also going for 4 Muscle Bands, because pretty much everything in the deck, with the exception of like Shaman EX, all of our Mons really appreciate Muscle Band, and of course, if nothing else on Seismitoad, it blocks Headringer. But yeah, 50 damage, Quaking Punches are much more meaningful than 30, and Slowing Beam, of course, is much better at 90 damage. So we're going ahead and going for those 4 Muscle Bands, not really a good reason not to. And we're going for 4 Crushing Hammers here. This is our energy control. It makes Slowing Beam that much more scary and keeps our Toad happy by having people not retaliate on him. So there's that energy control factor. And we've also opted for 2 Enhanced Hammers here. It's almost a little debatable if they should make it in here, but I like it because there's just so much special energy out there, and it's a guaranteed hammer effect versus Crushing Hammer, obviously. And it's not a supporter play, so I did want to include the 2. I didn't want to flood us with 4, but I thought 2 was a useful inclusion because in a lot of games it's going to be a very important card for us. I've also opted for 2 switches. This is partially because, let's face it, our retreat costs are a little ugly in this deck. We don't want to retreat for the most part at all. I mean, we can just kind of sit on one Pokemon in the active slot. But Ariados, that's a thing, and it's a dangerous thing for us, and this is part of why we definitely pretty much have to have Switch. I've opted for Switch because usually the Pokemon in your opponent's active slot is one we want to keep there because of the way the deck operates. So I didn't want to escape rope and have it be a situation where we might potentially be helping our opponent by switching out. I've also opted for Stadium-wise, an interesting Stadium lineup. We're running 2 Silent Labs. This is the reason we've got 1 Shaman EX, so that we can get him early and then lay down one of our Silent Labs. Basically, well, there are a number of things that we block with Silent Lab, obviously, and you can probably think those up by yourself. But one thing that's very important that's running in high numbers in a lot of decks, which Silent Lab can really shut down and maintain our Seismitoad control, is the fact that Shaman EX itself is shut down by Silent Lab. And it doesn't hurt that the new Unknown is also shut down by it. This can restrict a lot of decks, really impair them. So that's why we've opted for 2 Silent Labs. But that said, we also have 1 copy of Team Aqua's Secret Base, as it raises everyone's retreat cost because that doesn't really matter to us anyway, and it can prevent free retreat Pokemon from playing tricks on us and helping our opponents kind of get out from under our control a little bit. This forces your opponents to pay energies to retreat, which is very powerful, especially in Modified where there's no Keldeo, no Floatstone, things like that. It can be pretty hurtful, so it's a good option to have. However, there is another one. I was really considering Faded Town to put some extra damage down on those Megas to put them on a shorter clock than we would otherwise, but we really have to opt for a Rough Seas here. Partially because, Seismitoad with Rough Seas can be pretty unpleasant for a lot of opponents, extending, things like 2-hit KOs into 3 and so on. But also really because we just need it against Ariados. And it's a good way to counter it long enough for us to potentially take it out, put damage into our opponent, Lysander up that spider and kill it, things like that. And finally, our energy lineup. We're obviously running 4 double colorless energies for reasons that are just so darn obvious. I don't even need to say what they are. If you've seen our Pokemon lineup, duh. And we have 5 water energies rounding out the deck. So there's no reason for any other type of energy, and it allows us to potentially Grenade Hammer. So we're definitely going for those water energies there. And there you have it. That is the deck. It is pretty interesting, and it wouldn't take too much imagination to switch it into an expanded format deck. I don't know if it'll quite have the speed for that, but it could definitely put some people through the ringer in that format. So anyway, until next time, like, comment, subscribe, check me out on Twitter. You will find my link down below in the description, and I will see you next time.